Let's get started. Welcome everyone to ForeFlight and ForeFlight. This is our second in a series of webinars where we're bringing you presentations that were given at EAA AirVenture in Oshkosh, Wisconsin a few weeks ago. Before we begin, I want to actually start at the bottom of this slide. After this webinar, you can go to foreflight.com/webinars. We'll post the video of this session there within the next 24 hours, but also you can sign up for our additional webinars of Oshkosh presentations. You can also find videos of any of those presentations at the bottom of that page. Now with that out of the way, we'd love to hear your questions during today's webinar. On the right side of your screen, you'll see the questions panel. We'll respond in writing to as many of you as we can during today's presentation. If you have a question, I'd encourage you to ask it as soon as you think of it. As we get toward the end of webinars, we tend to get more questions, making it harder to get to everyone. In addition to answering in writing, we'll also take a few of the more popular questions and answer them live at the end. If your question isn't answered today, though, you can always reach out to the pilot support team at team@foreflight.com. And before I hand it over to Jeremy, I also want to mention if you encounter any audio or other technical problems during today's webinar, try leaving and rejoining the session. We've also found that computers tend to have fewer problems on the GoToWebinar platform than mobile devices, so if you have a computer available to you, it may be a good idea to go ahead and watch us from there. With that, Jeremy, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started. Our session today is the first flight in ForeFlight. The scope of this session is to provide relatively new ForeFlight users with a step-by-step overview of planning, filing, flying, and then logging your first flight with ForeFlight Mobile. This session is scheduled to last approximately 1 hour, which should give us 15 or 20 minutes or so for general questions, or if you'd like to see anything I've talked about demonstrated in the app. So my name is Jeremy Lippard. I'm an education content specialist here at ForeFlight. My primary job is to create and give presentations like these. Before we jump into our content, I'd like to begin by highlighting some of the newer features and functions, and I'll start with the ability for Pro and Performance Plus subscribers to display traffic breadcrumbs when viewing ADS-B traffic in the Maps layer. We also now give users access to a day-night overlay to help with flight planning that can be toggled on or off in the map settings. ForeFlight will also push live runway traffic alerts audibly and visibly while using the app. And then by the time this webinar goes live, ForeFlight on the Apple Watch will be available to all subscribers and includes pre-flight weather and briefing features. We wanted to take a moment to talk about the different subscription tiers we have available here at ForeFlight. Basic Plus offers everything you need for planning, flying, and post-flight tracking and logging. All of our plans are billed annually. Basic Plus is $120 a year. Pro Plus includes everything that's in Basic Plus and also some additional features helpful to IFR pilots and anyone who needs increased situational awareness. And then Performance Plus has everything that's included in the Basic and Pro Plus plans, as well as some additional features for added efficiency in flight planning. So the plan for today's webinar is to walk through a complete first flight using ForeFlight. We're going to cover setting up an aircraft to ensure that we have everything set correctly, setting up a weight and balance profile so that we can ensure that we are within limits for every flight. We'll plan a simple cross-country flight. We'll get a weather briefing for that flight we're planning. We'll file a VFR flight plan directly within ForeFlight. We'll record a track log of our flight so that we can use it to review later. And then lastly, we'll log our flight in our logbook to make sure all of our hours are correctly tracked. So quickly, I'm going to talk about how to navigate around the app. ForeFlight is laid out as a series of tabs along the bottom of the screen. The tab I'm currently viewing is highlighted in white. And if I want to view a different function in the app, I simply tap on that tab. The number of visible tabs along the bottom depends on screen size and orientation. The last tab to the right is our More tab. If there are any tabs that are not visible, those tabs will always be accessible in the More tab. So right now we're viewing an iPad in landscape view. An iPad in landscape view is going to have more buttons visible along the bottom in our navigation toolbar than we'd have if you were viewing this in portrait mode, or on an iPhone. Again, any of the tabs, if you don't see a tab displayed, that can be found by tapping on the More tab in the bottom right-hand corner. So now that we know how to navigate around the app, let's go ahead and set up an aircraft, the aircraft we're going to use for our flight today. Setting up an aircraft correctly is important because this is what ForeFlight will use for everything from our performance numbers and fuel burn, as well as to the information that goes into our flight plan. So inside of ForeFlight, the first thing we're going to do is tap on the More tab in the lower right-hand corner. This will open up all of our options available to us in the More drawer that slides in on the right-hand side. To start building an aircraft profile, we'll tap on that Aircraft tab. This will take us to the Aircraft tab. Here, we see a list of all the aircraft we have set up on our account on the left-hand side and details about those aircraft on the right. Currently, we have no aircraft set up. We're going to tap the plus button along the top bar to start building a new aircraft profile. We can see that we now have a generic aircraft profile template without a tail number presented on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, our aircraft list shows an aircraft with no tail number. We can use the generic template at the right as a form to enter the data about our aircraft. So using the form, we're going to go ahead and enter in our tail number and then our aircraft type. So we'll tap on that aircraft type fields, and then we can search for aircraft by manufacturer, by model, or by filing code. I'm going to go ahead and use my pop-up keypad to search for a C-172. If you notice in our filtered list, there's a lot of variations of the C-172. So we do want to make sure that we find our specific model. We'll also have some text in blue letting us know what type of performance planning information we have available for this specific aircraft if we are Performance Plus subscribers. Once we find the STC that matches our aircraft, we're going to go ahead and simply tap on that radial button to the right of that aircraft listing. We'll select, once we've selected the correct aircraft, we're taken back to our Aircraft tab. Here we can see several fields have been filled in for us automatically based on our aircraft. For our Performance Plus customers, we also have some performance profiles available to you that have been created by ForeFlight. If you'd like to view those profiles, simply tap on the field that reads Performance Profiles to view what configurations we have available. These profiles should look familiar as we get this data directly from the manufacturer, and it is what they use when building your POH. If I am not a Performance Plus customer, I will only see the option to add or create a basic profile. Basic profiles allow me to put in a single airspeed and fuel burn for my climb, cruise, and descent. Back on my Aircrafts tab, if we scroll down, we'll be able to see our weights section. This should be mostly filled in for us using the manufacturer's information, but make sure to verify these numbers against your specific aircraft's POH. Scrolling down farther, we see our filing code section. This is important as this is what ForeFlight will later use when filing my flight plan, and to ensure that I don't have any issues with ATC accepting my flight plan, I need to have all my filing codes filled in correctly. Let's say for the sake of argument, I'm still not very good at memorizing and knowing all the ICAO equipment codes I need for my aircraft. That's okay. ForeFlight does have a handy document that I can use to find the correct codes. So right now we're viewing our aircraft tab. We're going to go ahead and tap on the Documents button along the bottom of the navigation toolbar. And this will take us to ForeFlight's document catalog. There is a lot of stuff here, and you will see more or less drives along the left-hand side depending on your region and subscription. Right now, I'm interested in a document from ForeFlight, so I'll go ahead and tap on the ForeFlight drive at the left. Here we can see all of the guides that ForeFlight published to all of our users to help you find important information. The first one here that's already been downloaded is the Pilot's Guide. This is effectively the POH for ForeFlight. If you haven't downloaded that one yet, I recommend you do that as well. The document that we are looking for today is the Filing Guide, and I'll go ahead and tap once on that blue download arrow on the Filing Guide. And then our filing guide will open effectively as a PDF. So inside of our filing guide, we can scroll through the bottom of the pages until we find the filing codes guide. In here is a list of common avionics and equipment I might have on my aircraft and what filing codes I need to use for each. If I filed a flight plan for this aircraft with ATC recently, ForeFlight will even look up the codes that I used when I filed that flight plan and automatically add them to my aircraft. So using that information, I'm back on my aircraft tab, and I'm going to go through and fill out the ICAO equipment for my aircraft. Remembering to verify my transponder surveillance codes using the filing guide document. And this is what we've put together for our modern light aircraft as a starting point. So we have our aircraft profile set up. We can start to add some additional information. So many people, unfortunately, don't do a weight and balance calculation for every flight. ForeFlight does make that very simple to do. So hopefully if you haven't been doing them every flight, you'll make a better habit of that going forward. So from our aircraft profile that we just built, we're just going to go ahead and tap on that More button again. Again, anytime we're trying to access a tab within the app that we don't see, we'll just tap on the More button. The More drawer will slide out from the right-hand side, and we're looking for weight and balance. So we'll just go ahead and tap on Weight and Balance. From here, we see that we don't have any profiles. Again, this is meant to be our first flight in ForeFlight. So similar to when we created an aircraft, we need to tap that plus button in the upper right-hand corner. All of our aircraft that we've put into the app will be displayed, and we'll just select the aircraft that we'd like to set up weight and balance for, and we'll do that by tapping once on that radial button. And we'll select a template if we have any templates available. In our case, we'll use the 4-seat template. So selecting a template gets us started. It has filled in a lot of information. You can see the stations are already filled in, and if we were to scroll down, we'd see more information that's already been pre-filled. You can always edit anything if your aircraft is non-standard. Again, any text in blue is editable. So we will start. There are two required fields you notice here that are not pre-filled. This is basic empty CG and basic empty weight. So we'll start by entering our basic empty CG, and we'll do that by tapping once on that field. We'll need to enter in our basic empty CG based on our POH. And then we also need to enter in our basic empty weight. You'll notice in our example that ForeFlight is recommending a basic empty weight to use. You can use that recommended empty weight or tap on that field and then enter in manually your aircraft's basic empty weight. If we did need to edit any station on our profile, again, all this information is pre-filled, so it might not specifically match your aircraft. Just tap on the field you'd like to edit, front seats, for example, and we can adjust any of the details for this station. If we scroll down in our profile, so all I've done is I'm still looking at my 4-seat arrangement, and you can see my stations here. If I scroll down slightly, I'll see my CG limits presented. And I'll continue to scroll down so I can preview our center of gravity envelope, and we can verify that we've entered in everything correctly. When I'm done, I'll just tap on the back button there, and I can view the profile I just created. If I'd like to enter in weights for one or more station, you just tap on the station for which you'd like to enter in weights. So I'd like to enter in weights for my pilot. I'll simply tap on that station. Along the right-hand side of each station, I can go ahead and enter in a weight. Right now, our load weight is listed as 0. I'll manually adjust that load weight. And if I give that weight a description, I can save that specific load for use on other flights in the future. So if you're typically flying with the same group of people, and you know their weights and their weights aren't fluctuating dramatically, you could pre-save those descriptors so that it makes it even quicker when you're building out your weight and balance for a flight. Now when I tap on station weight, I can see that I have a saved load with that description. Again, this is handy if there's people that you regularly fly with. I can go through and add the rest of my passengers and baggage, and then tap on fuel tanks to start viewing how my fuel will affect my weight in CG. Once we tap on that, we can enter in the fuel we're going to put into our aircraft today, and I can now see where my weight and balance in CG will be for takeoff on the right-hand side of the screen. Once I put the amount of fuel we're going to burn on this flight in my fuel consumption fields, I can now also see my takeoff weight, my landing weight, and my zero fuel weight depicted on my CG chart on the right-hand side. So now that we've set up a basic aircraft profile, we've set up a weight and balance profile, to make sure we're within limits for our flight today, we're going to use ForeFlight to plan a simple cross-country flight. From the weight and balance tab we're viewing, we're going to tap on Maps on the bottom of the navigation toolbar, and this will take us to the interactive map inside of ForeFlight. Here we're going to be doing our planning on the Maps tab today, and along the top of the Maps tab, we're going to tap on our FPL, or Flight Plan drawer. This opens up the flight plan drawer where we can enter in details for our flight. Along the left side, we have options to select our aircraft, select our performance profile, and select the altitude for our flight. Along the right-hand side, we can preview procedures in and out of an airport. We can view suggested routes between our airports and adjust our ETD. To begin planning our flight, the first thing we'll do is just tap right in the middle of the FPL drawer where it reads tap here to create a route. This will bring up our cursor and our pop-up keypad, and we can enter in an ICAO identifier directly into our flight plan drawer. Once you hit space, ForeFlight will recognize this as an airport and turn it into a route bubble icon. You can now interact with this icon, and you can do that simply by tapping on it. And if we tap on it, we'll have several different options depending on what type of route element it is. So you can see there what kind of options you have for that route element. Now we're ready to put in, this is our departure airport, we're ready to plan a destination airport. Let's say for my example, I'm not sure what the ICAO identifier is for my destination airport. So in this example, I'm going to use the universal search bar in the upper right-hand corner of the Maps tab. I'll tap in that search bar, and from here I can search for tons of different things across ForeFlight. What I'm going to do is go ahead and enter in the common name for the airport I'd like to make my destination airport. I'll enter in the city for that airport, in this case Montgomery, Alabama, and I can see all the things that match that name that I typed in to my universal search bar. You'll notice the first result is the airport is Montgomery Regional in Montgomery, Alabama. So that's what I'm looking for. So I'll go ahead and I'll tap once on that airport. I'm shown the location of that airport on the map, and I've gotten an information panel has slid in on the right-hand side of the screen. To add this airport to my route, I'm simply going to tap Add to Route along the top bar of that airport information sidebar. This adds the airport route bubble to my flight plan and has drawn a direct route between those 2 points. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a bit to get more details about the airspace I'm flying through and more details about the route. Let's say, for example, I might be uncomfortable about how this route takes me over open water in the Gulf. I'd like to adjust my route to avoid that over water portion. And I'll do this by pressing and holding anywhere along the route and then dragging the route to a new position. So I press and I hold, and then I simply drag my finger to a new position. Once I release, the green circle on the map will highlight where I've released my finger, and the information sidebar on the right will display these as coordinates. For my flight, though, rather than simply adding those coordinates, which I could do by tapping on the coordinates that appear on the top, I'm going to add an existing waypoint to my flight plan so that I have an easier reference for ATC if I need to communicate with them. So I'll go ahead and I'll tap on the waypoint near where I released my finger, and if you'll notice, we do get a distance and a bearing from where we released our finger and the distance and bearing to these waypoints. So I can see that this waypoint is only 7 nautical miles away. So I'll go ahead and I'll tap on that waypoint. And now that waypoint has been added to my route, and my route has been edited to avoid that overwater portion of the Gulf. I can interact with that route element in my flight plan drawer the exact same way I can do with any other route element. So if you needed to replace it, delete it, move it to a different portion of the route, all those options are available to you. I've made a fairly basic flight plan, but you'll notice along the bottom of my flight plan drawer, my ETA field is blank. The ETA field is blank because I haven't entered in an ETD yet, so ForeFlight can't predict when I'll arrive if it doesn't know when I plan on leaving. So I'll go ahead and tap on my ETD button. I'll enter in my planned ETD, and now my flight summary is complete. Another tool that's available to Pro Plus subscribers and Performance Plus subscribers is my route profile view. So right now I'm only looking at my route in my maps view. If I'd like to look at a cross section of my route and I'm a Pro or Performance Plus subscriber, I can tap once on that profile button and I see a cross section of my route, and this includes airspace along my route. So I can see the lateral and the vertical extent of airspace along my route. I'm sorry, I went too quick there. If I tap on any element, so if I tap on that airspace, that element will be highlighted on the map, and I can preview some information about that airspace. I can see that the route takes me through Tampa's Class Bravo if I'm flying above 6,000 feet. So I can use that rubber band tool I showed you earlier to try to avoid the lateral extent of this airspace, or I can plan on reducing my altitude as I'm bypassing this airspace to ensure that I avoid that Bravo. My flight plan more or less is good to go to me. I'm going to run through my last steps to make sure I'm prepared, and I'll do that by opening up my pack tool. So I'll tap once on the little pack button there. It looks like a suitcase. The red exclamation point lets me know that I have information I haven't yet downloaded. So I'll go ahead and tap on that pack tool. And displayed on the inset map, I can see a corridor surrounding my route, as well as a summary of what information I need to update. If you'd like to see the complete list of information, in this example I could just scroll down, but as this is meant to show my first flight in ForeFlight, I'm missing a lot of data that I haven't yet downloaded. So we can see that this is going to be 1.14 gigabytes to pack for this flight. But when I'm all ready, I'm going to go ahead and tap on the pack button there, and this will make sure I have everything downloaded so that when I'm flying, I'll have all this information even when I don't have an active internet or data connection. ForeFlight will take a moment to download all that data. You'll see a progress bar showing you how slowly or how quickly it's progressing. And once it's all finished, you'll get a confirmation that tells you that you're all packed. This is The information that's downloaded, especially weather and NOTAMs, is going to be time sensitive, so this is something you should do pretty close to departure to make sure you're getting the most updated information on your device. So we've planned our route. We've created our aircraft profile. We set up a basic weight and balance, and now we'd like to get a pre-flight weather brief. So there's a couple different ways we can start previewing weather in ForeFlight. We'll look at some of them. We'll first start by tapping on the layer selector in the upper left-hand corner of our maps view. And we can select the product we'd like to view. In this example, we'll tap on the radar layer. And I can see that radar along my route. Some of the other weather layers are available only to our higher subscription tiers. Here we can see our icing layer or our turbulence layer. But I'm pretty confident in my flight plan that I'm ready to depart from Lakeland. So I'll go ahead and tap on my departure airport. And I'm able to preview comms information from the airport sidebar. And I'd like to see the current METAR. So I'll go ahead and tap on weather from the information sidebar. And I see my current METAR, and the color code tells me that this airport is currently VFR. If I'd like to see a forecast, I can do that by tapping on the daily button, and a daily forecast is shown. If I choose to, I can browse upcoming weather or tap on a specific day to see an hourly forecast. I'm back in my Maps tab, and I'm ready to brief and then file this flight plan. And I'll tap once on FPL to reopen my flight plan drawer. Then I'll tap on the Send To icon, that's one that looks like a box with a little up arrow, to forward this route to my Flights tab. Then I'll tap on Flights to send this to my Flights tab. So now we're viewing our flight in our Flights tab. I can preview my departure or destination runway information by tapping either button. So if I'd like to preview my takeoff runway information, I'll tap on Takeoff. And I can preview, in some cases edit, this runway information. If I'm satisfied with this, if I have briefed it and I have all the information I need, I'll simply return to my flight by tapping on the Return button. If I'm a Performance Plus subscriber, I can also use our integrated weight and balance tool to adjust weight and balance on a flight-by-flight basis. So earlier we set up a weight and balance profile, but this is something once that's set up, we can edit it on a flight-by-flight basis if we are a Performance Plus subscriber. I'll scroll back up while viewing my flight details. And I'd like to receive a pre-flight weather briefing for my planned flight. I'll go ahead and tap once on that briefing button. ForeFlight will begin to retrieve my briefing. This briefing is time sensitive, so if you're going through this workflow several hours before your planned flight, or if your ETD changes, be sure to retrieve this briefing again closer to departure. Looking at my weather briefing, I can see the table of contents at left and the briefing itself at right. Along the bottom, I can see a timestamp informing me of when this briefing was generated. You can navigate the briefing via the table of contents at left. You can scroll through the documents, or you can advance to the next document. TAFs are included for en route airports during your planned flight time. We've returned to our flight details page, and we've returned to our flight details page by just tapping once on the back button in the upper left-hand corner. So we've returned to our flight details page, and we'll quickly preview our navlog, and we'll do that by tapping once on the navlog button. And we can view a printable, shareable, and downloadable navlog for our planned flight. Again, note the timestamp at the bottom to indicate when this document was last updated. I've planned my route, I've received my weather briefing, and now I'm ready to file. So I'm back in my flight details page in the Flights tab, and all I'll do is I'll simply tap on the Proceed to File button in the bottom right-hand corner. And I'll see a preview, or a confirmation screen rather, showing us all of my flight plan details that will be submitted to ATC. In the pop-up window, if I were to tap on that Send To icon in the upper right, you could also preview an ICAO filing form. If we're ready to just proceed with digital filing, we don't need to print a copy of our ICAO form. We'll just go ahead and tap once on File. You'll see a processing pop-up to tell you ForeFlight is in the process of filing your flight plan. And then you'll receive a confirmation once your flight plan has been filed with ATC. Along the bottom right, you'll notice the Proceed to File button has been replaced with options to activate your VFR flight plan, cancel the flight plan, or amend the flight plan. If we were to tap on Amend, we'll see that same confirmation pop-up that we saw earlier, and if we needed to make any changes, we'd adjust those fields accordingly. As a reminder, throughout ForeFlight, any field in blue can be edited. Once you've made any changes, just go ahead and tap on File Changes, and then your flight plan will be amended per those changes. So we've planned our flight. We built an aircraft profile. We built a weight and balance profile. We adjusted our route to avoid some overwater flying we were uncomfortable with. We previewed some weather radar information, and we've received a current weather briefing. We've also finished filing our flight plan with ATC. So we're ready to fly. We're going to make sure we are recording our track logs in ForeFlight Mobile, though. And the track log is an optional feature included with all ForeFlight subscription that allows you to record flights using the iPad or iPhone's built-in GPS or a connected external GPS. The track logs can be shared, and I'll show you guys how you can associate those track logs with logbook entries. There are two ways to record a track log within ForeFlight. The first is simply to tap on the track log record button on the Maps tab. This is how I record my track logs. I've just simply added a line to my pre-flight checklist to remind me to enable my track log during my pre-flight. And then in my after shutdown checklist, I have another reminder to turn off my track log. So one way you can make sure you're recording a track log is on the Maps view, simply tap on the track log record button. Alternatively, and this is what we're going to walk through now, we can enable the automatic track log recordings, and we can make sure those are enabled or check to see if they're enabled by tapping on the More button on the bottom right-hand corner. Then we'll go ahead and tap on the gear icon to open up our settings. And we can see all of our settings for ForeFlight here. So there are quite a few ways you can customize the appearance of ForeFlight and how you use ForeFlight. We could scroll through all the different options here until we found the track log settings options. But to make it a little quicker, we're going to use the filter along the top here, and we'll just use that filter to type in the word track log, and the settings will be filtered to only show those settings that are related to the track log. So you'll notice there's two options here. One is already toggled on by default. That's enable start stop control. When that is turned on, which it is here, all that means is the record button will be available on the Maps view. The next option below that is enable auto start stop. So we'll go ahead and we'll toggle on the auto start stop feature by tapping on that once. We can confirm that this is now toggled on. So once that auto start feature is enabled, ForeFlight will begin recording a track log once the device senses a takeoff and automatically stop recording the track log after ForeFlight senses a landing. Track logs can be accessed from the Track Logs tab. So you'll notice here We do have a track log showing the flight we planned. If you're paying attention, you may notice that the time is not correct. This was done using a sim just to generate a track log. So the actual time it took would be significantly longer than zero point 0.1 hours to go from Lakeland to Montgomery. But the track log on your device will be accurately recorded. So after we finish our flight, we want to make sure we've correctly logged our time to make sure our currencies are accurate. And there are two ways to add a track log to the logbook. While viewing a track log, if you tap this Send To icon in the upper right-hand corner, you can manually add this track log to your logbook. Or if we tap on the More button in the lower right-hand corner, we can use that More drawer that is slid in from the right-hand side, and we can open up our logbook by tapping once on Logbook. Here we can see our most recent track log is listed as a draft entry. ForeFlight will suggest adding track logs to your logbook automatically. If I'd like to view this track log to decide whether or not it should be added, I'll just tap once on that draft entry, and I can see all the details that will go in my logbook. As with the other parts of the app, any fields in blue can be edited directly, and you can edit these until you approve this entry, because this is a draft logbook entry. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see more fields, and you can make edits as needed. Once you're satisfied, so in this example, you'll notice that we did change our total time. It was 0.1 because it was recorded on our simulator. We've changed it to more accurately reflect our flight time. And that is, once we've done that, we're satisfied with all of our changes, we'll just go ahead and tap on Approve. And Logbook will keep track of my currencies and endorsements, and it does sync across all devices. If you're still in the learning stage and you're still flying with a CFI, or maybe you're getting a IFR certification, your CFIs can also issue you endorsements right through the app in your logbook. They can sign your logbook right in the app. It's very simple to do all of that and keep track of all that in the logbook. So that does wrap up our first flight in ForeFlight session. Before I turn it over for questions, I do want to quickly run through some options available to you if you'd like to learn more outside of these sessions. On your screen, I'm showing you the pilot's guide, which you can find within the app in the documents catalog. I showed this a little earlier. If you'd like to see any of the videos we've produced, if you go to foreflight.com/videos, you can access those. blog.foreflight.com will give you some of the latest information about the app, and you can sign up on our website for a monthly newsletter. Above all else, if you have any issues, please contact our support team at team@foreflight.com. All of our support team members are experienced pilots and ForeFlight experts, so please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out if you need help with anything in the app. They've all been there. They're all experts. They know how to answer your questions. So that wraps up my portion. It went a little faster than I expected, so I guess we have some more time for Q&A. And hopefully we got some good questions, and thank you everyone for your time.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, we've had a lot of great questions coming in today. I've got a couple more useful links I want to mention just before we jump into those. And don't worry about copying down all of these links right now. We'll be sure to include them in an email that you're going to get later today. First, if you have any questions about how to use a feature within ForeFlight, or if you encounter something you weren't expecting, support.foreflight.com is a great place to start. You can search and browse through thousands of articles from our support team covering just about anything you can think of. And Jeremy mentioned the second one, but I think it's important enough to mention again. The Pilot's Guide is a great resource to learn about the app. You can find it both online at this link and in the ForeFlight app. Next, foreflight.com/webinars is where you can find all of our recent webinars. I'll be posting the video of today's presentation there within the next 24 hours. You can also sign up for additional sessions with our presenters who are at Oshkosh on that page coming up in the next few weeks. You can also, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can find videos from all of our other presentations at the show. And lastly, if you ever need help or if your question that you submitted today isn't answered during today's webinar, reach out to the pilot support team at team@foreflight.com. Now with that, let's move on to some questions. And we appreciate all the questions that you have sent in today. The first one that I have is for Jeremy. And they say, I have a really simple question. I've made some marks on the map, some magenta lines. How can I get rid of them?
Yeah, sure. Jay, can you show my iPad and I can just demonstrate this really quick?
Yeah, there you go.
Cool. So everyone should be able to see it. This is actually a really common question we get all of the time. So if you look at my screen right here, I've made some annotations. I have a smiley face, and then I messed up making an X right there on the right-hand side. So anytime you've made any annotations on the map, they will automatically save. If you've done this by accident or done it and forgot that you did it, and it's just kind of irritating you, and you want to get rid of it, all you have to do on the left-hand side of the screen, we'll go ahead and tap on that little pencil icon. This will bring up our annotation tool. Once our annotation tool is open, I'm sorry, it timed out there. I'm going to tap on clear on the upper right-hand corner. I'll get a confirmation whether or not I want to clear my annotations. I'll tap on that, and then all of my annotations will be cleared. I can't erase individual annotations, but if you do have a lot of like chicken scratch all over your map, this is the simplest and fastest way to clean that up.
The next question for you is, how can you increase the number of airports that are being shown on the map? This person says that they see several airports, but not as many as maybe their friend has on their iPad.
Yeah, so the simplest solution to this is probably going to be our airports filter setting. And I'm going to just open up my map screen settings by tapping on my gear icon to the right of my FPL drawer. And I'll scroll down a little bit and you'll see underneath my aeronautical tab, right now I'm showing custom airports. If I tap on that field once, I have some options here where I can show a different types of airports. I can show airports. I can hide certain types of airports. I can hide private airports. I can hide seaplane bases. I can show heliports, etc. And then you may or may not have noticed this before, but we do have a runway length filter. Right now it's set to none, but if I tap on that filter, I can then exclude some of the smaller runways. If you're flying a small aircraft, you probably don't really need to use this, but if you are flying a bigger aircraft, it may be useful to you to be able to hide some of those smaller airports. So I'm just going to go ahead and set that back to none. The only other thing I can think is the map does add data as you zoom in and takes away some details as you zoom out. So if you're not seeing all the airfields you think you should be seeing, try those two things first. Otherwise, if you email us at team@ForeFlight, we can take a look to see if there's some data that's missing from our database.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. The next question I have, I'll go ahead and take it. This person asks, what's required to use the track logs? Do you need an iPad with a GPS, or do you need something like a Sentry? And the short answer is you can use an iPad with a cellular chip built in, whether you have cell service or not. Doesn't matter as long as it has the chip. That's all you need. Or an iPhone. You can record track logs with those. The Sentry isn't required, but you can get more data with that. So I'll just show you a quick example of what that looks like. I like to turn on my iPhone when I'm on commercial flights and sit near the window and try to get altitude and speed data. But you can see I don't have access to the pitch, bank, or any other information. But on this flight, I did use a Sentry Plus, and I'm able to now view altitude, speed, pitch, bank, G-load, and so I have a lot more information, and also I found that it's just more accurate in general. The next question I'll take, or that I'll hand off, is to Jeremy. This person says, for flight planning, I was wondering whether I can change my flight altitude throughout the flight. For example, I want to be at a certain altitude at a certain waypoint and then climb further later, and similarly for descent. So can you show us what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. Again, if you could just show my iPad screen. So this is something that will be covered in more detail in our power user session, which I believe is next week, and Jay probably has the specific time of that. But I'll show two basic ways you can kind of do this. So this is more or less the same route I had presented during the seminar I just gave. And you'll notice I've added one extra waypoint on here, but I'm just going to go ahead and tap on any of my waypoints. Right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the information panel slide in. If I tap on more, I do have the option to set altitude, speed, time. My options for setting the altitude, for now I'll just focus on the altitude, but my options, for setting that altitude are starting at, which means when I hit that waypoint, this is the altitude I should be at, or I'm sorry, that's the altitude I'm starting at, or cross at that's the altitude I should be when I cross that waypoint. So right now my altitude, it looks like for this flight, is set to 6,000 feet. If I change this to let's just change this to 7,000 feet, 7,000 feet. You'll notice in my FPL drawer on the left-hand side, there's a note next to that waypoint that has a new altitude. The other place I can view this, if I tap on my profile view, we can see in my profile view there is an altitude change at that waypoint Hupor, or I don't know how to pronounce that, but I'm going to say it's Hupor. I can do the same thing again. If I tap on this next waypoint in my profile, I have those same options, start at, cross at. Let's do this one at... Let's do this at 8,500, and we can see basically how we can use waypoints on our flight plan to kind of change the altitude from waypoint to waypoint.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. One more quick question for you here. When you're packing a flight, which we did on this flight from Lakeland up to Alabama, how wide is the corridor width that you were showing?
Yeah, so we mentioned the pack icon. This is going to download. We can see what information this is downloading here to make sure I have the most up-to-date information along this corridor. So when I originally made that presentation, it was some time ago, so that information I had downloaded was no longer current. But you'll notice on my screen, I have this corridor presented essentially to the left and right of my planned route. And that corridor is going to be 25 nautical miles left and right. And ForeFlight will prompt me to pack any of the relevant information. I can see the types of data I'm packing here. Any of that relevant information for anything within that 25 nautical mile corridor.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jeremy. And want to thank you all for coming today. We've gotten a lot of great questions. If your question wasn't answered today, I'm going to start at the bottom of this list here. Reach out to our pilot support team at team@foreflight.com. You can also reach out to them anytime you have any questions or you encounter something you weren't expecting in the app. These other links here are also fantastic resources. Look for information from our support team at support.foreflight.com. As I mentioned, you'll find tons of articles there that are all really helpful. You can read the pilot's guide both online and within ForeFlight. And as Jeremy mentioned a minute ago, the Power Users webinar we have coming up next Tuesday at the same time, 2 p.m. Central. You can register for that at foreflight.com/webinars. We also have additional webinars coming up that you can register for there. You can also view past ones or any of the presentations that were given in Oshkosh this year. So with that, I want to thank you all so much for coming, and we'll see you on the next webinar.